Hello and welcome to the May 1st edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson here at the State House in Columbia. Well, it was the first day of the last 2 weeks of the legislative session, and we saw quite a bit of activity both on and off the House and Senate floors. Starting in the Senate, we did see Senate Judiciary members vote to move out two utility reform bills that will kind of change the makeup of the utilities going forward. I'm trying to make some things work. It's not working here. Hello and welcome to the May 1st edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson here at the State House in Columbia. Well, we did see a lot of activity on this first day of the last 2 weeks of the legislative session up here in Columbia. We saw lawmakers and the Senate Judiciary Committee today move along two utility reform bills. One would create a consumer advocate for consumers who are affected by utility regulation in the state, and that would be in the Department of Consumer Affairs. We also saw lawmakers give subpoena power give the Office of Regulatory Staff, a state regulator, this ability to subpoena utilities for documents they need to better provide regulations in the state. So a lot of activity moving there, and we also saw them move out a bill that would actually prospectively repeal the Base Load Review Act. That's that controversial 2007 law that has given utilities the ability to charge customers in advance of projects, and we saw that specifically for the VC Summer Nuclear Project, which is now a $9 billion failure that SCE&G customers and Santee Cooper Electric customers are still paying for. Of course, Santee Cooper Electric customers aren't regulated by that law, but they are also partners when it came to that failed project. So SCE&G customers, remember, are paying $27 a month roughly of their bill. And we will see a a conference committee meet tomorrow, Wednesday, to kind of hash out how much of that bill customers will still be paying temporarily in the future. But that's tomorrow. Let's continue to talk about what happened today. We did see activity over in the House dealing with a bill that would actually provide for qualifications for the superintendent of education with the ability of the governor to appoint that superintendent of education in 2023. Now, this bill was a big first step in trying to get the governor to be able to appoint the superintendent of education, which is right now, it's a constitutional office, which means the voters every 4 years go to the ballot box and select that superintendent, which they're doing again this year. So this does not affect this year. And of course, there's also another measure that has to be incorporated into this before the governor can actually appoint the superintendent themselves. We need to see a bill that is currently stuck, a House bill that's currently stuck in the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's been there since last February, which would actually put this question to voters who would want to, if they would want to see the governor appoint the superintendent of education instead of them selecting the superintendent. So that's a constitutional change, so it has to go before the voters. And we've seen the voters approve bills like this before. We saw them actually put the lieutenant governor on the ballot, which was actually a measure that was done years ago and actually is in effect this year. And we also saw them move the adjutant general into a position appointed by the governor as well. So this would be a big measure. Of course, it would give the governor more power and actually the ability to stay on message when it comes to education priorities in the state as well as funding, because right now they are pretty limited to what they can do since the superintendent of education is their own separate office. So kind of hamstrung by that, even though education is such a major priority of so many governors in the state. Also, we did see no debate on the House floor dealing with any activity with the budget. We expect that tomorrow, but we do know that there will be plenty of more activities, of course, in the Senate too, where they did take up that dismemberment abortion ban bill. We have some more details about that as well, and that's something that went late into the evening. We actually just kind of wrapped up debate on that. Several senators there haggling over some details there, but we're going to start right now in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where we did see action with those two utility reform bills. Of course, one creating that consumer advocate position, and the other one would prospectively repeal the Base Load Review Act going forward. So here's some more details from Senator Shane Massey right now.
ORS is having a very difficult time getting the information that they need, and the utilities are stonewalling. And they'll make them sign confidentiality agreements. They'll make them go off-site to look at documents. They'll make them look at them only through data rooms, as opposed to giving them hard copies, that type of stuff. So this, first of all, points out that they're not going to be required to sign a confidentiality agreement, but that's because by statute we're saying it's all confidential unless the commission says that it's not. It also says that they can review the stuff in their office. That's actually the first thing that's added there. Is to be produced at the regulatory staff's office, so they can review it there without having to go off-site and look at it only in certain securitized situations. And then finally, the very end on page 2 in subsection E, it gives ORS the ability to go to the administrative law court to get a subpoena. Right now, they don't have subpoena power, which again makes it more difficult for them to get all the information that they need in order to analyze and present their arguments to the Public Service Commission. This gives them that authority to go to the ALC to issue those subpoenas. It's just this amendment is designed to ensure that ORS has access to and gets the information they need to analyze the issue before them and to present their arguments to the Public Service Commission. The House bill put the consumer advocate in the Attorney General's office. We had a good bit of conversation in the subcommittee about where we wanted to place the consumer advocate. And what we've got in that first amendment, that strike all, is it puts the consumer advocate with the powers that we talked about earlier in the consumer affairs. And this bill does two things as it came out of the House, really. One of the things is it gives statutory definitions for prudence and imprudence, because there are no statutorily defined. There are no statutory definitions for those terms now, although they are regularly used at the Commission, and those things are very important when dealing with the Baseload Review Act, especially when it comes to the abandonment proceeding. So the House bill did that. It also set their rate. It set the interim experimental rate. So what we did in the subcommittee is we struck that provision dealing with rates, because that's what we have that language in 954, so we don't need to have that here. We accepted most of the House's definitions for imprudence and prudence.
And like I said, the House did concur with that major piece of legislation today that would create the qualifications for the superintendent of education position going forward. Currently, those educations are pretty limited. Those educations of qualifications are a little limited. This going forward would actually create a kind of a more of a tighter rubric that lawmakers will use when they are evaluating the governor's appointee for the superintendent of education going forward. And again, this would take effect in 2023. And of course, like we said, we still need to see a bill that is stuck in the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's been there for a year now. That would needed to be passed in order for this to actually really go into effect, for the governor to actually appoint the superintendent of education. But here's some more details from the House as they voted to move those qualifications along to the governor's desk right now.
We've been debating this, or it's been on the agenda for a couple of years now. The Senate had set up the provisions and the qualifications. The current superintendent of education is on board, has been on record as being on board. Also former Superintendent Nielsen and Superintendent Tenenbaum. So I would ask you to concur with the Senate bill.
And we saw some interesting parliamentary procedure action on the Senate floor, which we always enjoy watching because it's always quite a treat to see what we come up with down there. But we did see Senate lawmakers, Senate Democrats actually, before they even got to the dismemberment abortion ban bill, they let Senator Richard Cash, who's a Republican from Anderson, who's really a huge proponent of all these abortion bills, who says that abortion, outlawing it, banning these procedures, creating the personhood bill, which would protect any fertilized egg and treat it as a human, really take the charge on these bills. And we saw Democrats actually even toy with him, which was the words that we heard from the Senate Majority Leader, a fellow Republican, who said that the Democrats were toying with him because the Democrats lifted their contention against the personhood bill. So the personhood bill was actually in front of the dismemberment abortion ban bill. So since the personhood bill was not contested, it was an uncontested calendar, so that goes before the special order calendar, which is where the dismemberment abortion ban bill is. So Democrats seem to have a little fun with Richard Cash, Senator Cash, by allowing him to take to the well and talk about the personhood bill. Now the key to that is that Republicans are not too big on that personhood bill. They know it's a difficult bill to pass. They know that they really can't get it passed because it is somewhat unconstitutional and controversial. Even some pro-life Republicans are not fans of that personhood bill. So Democrats let Senator Cash talk for several minutes there until Senator Massey, who's the majority leader, stood up and basically told him that, you know, they're kind of messing with you, so you can almost filibuster your next bill, which is the Dismemberment abortion ban bill, which does have some more support. However, there could be changes to that bill from Senator Cash himself that could almost make that bill into somewhat of a personhood bill hybrid that could be contentious for some Republicans. So again, it's very early in these discussions, very early in to see what's going to happen. We do know that the Democrats have said they will filibuster as long as they need to, even if that takes the remaining 6 days of session, even if it blocks other bills. Now, it's also worth noting that there are some other bills, such as those utility reform bills we just talked about, that are on the Senate floor now. But while they might get stuck behind this bill, this whole the Dismemberment abortion ban bill, there are ways to pull up other bills before special order too. And just to clarify what dismemberment abortion is, it is a rarely used procedure. About 20 procedures happened in 2016 out of about 5,700 abortion procedures. So rarely used, often done in hospitals after the first trimester when the life and the health of the mother is in danger. So this is not a typically used procedure. It is a legal procedure, but it is not one that is typically done, again, rarely done if the life of the mother is in danger. Other states that have passed this dismemberment abortion ban have faced litigation in the courts, and it's not unexpected to imagine that there would be an injunction filed in the courts if this bill was ever to get signed by the governor. Because remember, this dismemberment abortion ban bill has passed the House and is now in the Senate. Of course, we have 5 days going forward after Tuesday, so it could get through. But again, Senate Democrats, even if it blocks other bills from going through, they have said that they will do whatever it takes to make sure it doesn't. So here's that comment from Senator Massey, kind of enlightening Senator Cash as to what the Democrats were trying to do today, and then also some opening comments from Senator Cash himself from the Senate floor.
Senator, will you yield for a question? Senator from Anderson, will you yield for a question?
Yes, I will yield for a question.
Senator will. Senator from Edgefield.
Senator, am I right that you have an amendment to 3548, the bill that's in special order, to do essentially what you've been talking about here?
I do.
You understand the difference that the House bill is in a better position than the Senate bill is?
Correct.
All right. Do you also understand that they're playing with you?
Well, if they want to discuss this twice or 3 times, I'm willing to do that.
Well, I guess my question was, it seems to me that you've actually, so you have did you know that you had the First Amendment up on 3548?
I've been told that.
And I went to confirm it myself just to make sure. Yours is your personhood amendment is the first one up on 3548. It seems to me that you are much more likely to get a vote on this exact same language as an amendment on 3548 than you are on this one. They're not going to let you have a vote on that. Do you understand that?
Well, then I will move for adoption of this amendment. Killing a living child one piece at a time. That is D&E, dismemberment abortion. As horrible as it is, however, we need to keep in mind that the fundamental issue is not how horrible a particular method of abortion is. The fundamental issue is that an innocent human being is being intentionally killed at all. In the womb, of all places, which should be a safe place for a baby. The fundamental issue is that this baby in the womb does not share in the unalienable right to life that each of us so easily takes for granted. He or she has no constitutional protection as a person under the 5th and 14th Amendments. I am grateful that the dismemberment bill seeks to protect some babies from a particularly heinous form of killing, but I present this personhood amendment in order to extend this protection to all babies from all methods of killing. In 2016, 22 babies were killed by dismemberment, but another 5,714 were killed by other methods. We cannot be satisfied with attempting to save 22 when we should be attempting to save all the babies.
So, Senator, just to be clear, under this amendment, there would be no exception for a 12-year-old girl who was raped. She would have no choice but to go ahead and carry that child to term. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. If it was incest, same thing?
Same thing, and I think you probably realize that oftentimes in such a case, the abortion is the cover-up.
Well, I didn't thought of it that way, but what I'm thinking more of is the fact that the young girl was the victim in this case, and now she's being made to move forward with delivering a child that she may not be physically able to, and it's only death. I mean, it has to be her life that's in jeopardy, right? Just because it may be that she's not ready to deliver at her age, that's not good enough. It's got to actually be something that'll kill her before she has the right to have an abortion.
Well, broadly speaking, Senator, I would think that someone, if they're able to become pregnant, is able to carry a baby.
Okay. And so there's no exception in here for that. How about under this amendment, if it clearly states that life is triggered at the time of fertilization, is that right?
I believe that's what science teaches, yes.
And the Senate is expected to stay on that dismemberment abortion ban bill tomorrow and for the foreseeable future. So expect to see that continue. We do expect to see a conference committee meeting tomorrow afternoon on S954. Now that's the bill that would deal with SCE&G customers' electrical rates. Remember, every SCE&G customer is paying about 18% of their bill every month to the failed VC Summer Nuclear Project. Now there is a bill, S954, which would change those rates, possibly reducing them to 5%, possibly even lower to 0. That's the difference between the Senate and the House version of this bill, which is why the conference committee, which is made up of 3 House and 3 Senate lawmakers, will meet to start hashing out a compromise on that bill tomorrow. So expect some news from that tomorrow as well. And then we'll also see House lawmakers are expected to, again, start debating that budget amendment. The $8.2 billion budget is back in the House. And this is when lawmakers need to say either concur or not concur with the Senate version. Usually they just kind of amend it back to their version. That gets kicked back to the Senate. And then the conference committee is formed from there, and they begin to hash out details over the budget. But right now we did see that there was an amendment made on last Thursday, and it really did throw Democrats into quite a whirlwind, and it did cause a lot of headaches right there. So we are expecting some more debate on what to do and what to see with that amendment on Wednesday. But be sure to stick with SCE TV throughout the remaining days of the legislative session, as we're bringing you live updates every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from the State House at 7 p.m. live on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and my Twitter account at Gavin Jackson. Also, you can find out what's going on every day at the State House Daybook, on SCETV.org. The State House Daybook gives you a rundown of all the day's events, meetings, agendas, events happening outside the State House, like the governor's schedule and also the Supreme Court schedule, which is in session this week. And you can find the top news headlines on there as well. So everything kind of in one place, nice and easy, especially since things are a little difficult to follow up here. And you can also maintain news, find out your news on SC Public Radio every day and every Friday when Russ McKinney gives you the State House Week recap, the Legislative Week recap. Every Friday it can be heard on SC Public Radio and on scpublicradio.org. You can also check out the SC Lead podcast. When I sit down with reporters that cover the State House and the top issues facing the state, we go behind the headlines to give you some more context and more insight on those top issues. We drop a new podcast every Tuesday, and you can subscribe through Apple Podcasts or wherever you find podcasts. I'm Gavin Jackson for SCE TV here in Columbia.